Look, experts have warned that childhood obesity is heading in, to say the least, the wrong direction, as new research shows that the majority of kids are expected to be overweight or obese in 9 areas in England over the next decade. The Royal Society for Public Health has estimated that 41% of Year 6 students, that's the top of primary school, will be obese in 10 years' time, 2035, with 90% of the country set to see rates worsen. A junk food advertising ban was set to begin in October this year, which would ban unhealthy food or drink adverts on telly before 9 o'clock and introduce restrictions online. But ministers have delayed the move, get this, after pressure from the Food and Drink Federation, which represents corporations including, but not limited to, Nestlé and Coca-Cola. With more than a third of primary school children overweight, who's to blame? Is it parents for giving their kids too much food, or do fast food companies need to take more responsibility? Nelufar, I'll start with you. You don't think that the blame lies solely with parents?
No.
Whose fault is it?
I absolutely don't think that the blame lies solely with parents. I think there are lots of contributing factors to why a young person, especially a child, might be obese. Least of all, poverty and food deserts. We have food deserts in this country, which means that it's very, very difficult to access healthy food should you need to. And I don't want to hear, I know somebody's going to say something like, well, a carrot's only 12p and spinach is only 8p. Yes, but creating a meal out of those separate ingredients versus buying fish fingers or whatever else you might buy, that's the price difference. That's the premium on fresh food. So
isn't that the soft bigotry of low expectation from communities like that? I mean, you came to this country as a refugee. You were not in any way handed all of the success you've had and the health that you clearly have. You had parents who
cooked me fresh meals every day.
Right, but they didn't have any money.
They didn't have any money, but we survived on fresh meals every day.
Well, why? What was the difference?
Because my mum and dad had the knowledge of how to prepare such food. They also prioritised it. It was also cheap because we depended on almost like a cooperative where a neighbour might cook and another person might cook. So I grew up with that as being my basis. I couldn't do that today. We were wealthier back then than we are today as people who are, I mean, I would say, I don't even know what I was. I wasn't even working class. I suppose I was an underclass coming up. But the main point is, we cannot expect parents to bear the burden of these food deserts that people live in. Right. Can I just name some of the places that we're talking about?
Yeah, sure.
Blackpool, Knowsley, Sandwell, Barking and Dagenham, Wolverhampton, Walsall, Newham, Luton and Nottingham. Some of these places are some of the most disadvantaged in our countries. Right. There's a parallel here. Right.
Well, Trevor, I think you disagree with Nelufar, if I'm not wrong. Trevor in London?
Yeah, no. What she's saying is correct, because we aren't told how to feed children, first of all. Second of all, food is activity. In my day, children were as active as parents used to have to come to their front door, call the children in when it was late at night, because children were more active. Children are less active now than they were years ago. Years ago, most children age 11 could swim length of a pool age 11. Today, we're lucky if it's 100, because children are not encouraged to be active enough. And I learned this at school. I taught a school, a PE teaching assistant, a school that beat my school at soccer 10-1. Back in those days, they were so fast, quick.
Well, I have to say, your view does chime with the Royal Society for Public Health. They make the point that you're making as well. It's not just a question of intake of food, but it's also about exercise. Playing fields are disappearing. I think the point that Nelufar might want to add in due course is that the lack of privilege is also lack, perhaps, of access to the type of opportunities to exercise as well. But nevertheless, Joe, you're in East Sussex. Is it parents' fault?
Yes, I do believe, right, because I live down here and I've moved down here 2 years ago. Right. And then I see, when I went to school, I'm 56, when I went to school, you'd have the overweight child in the class or the year. And now I'm seeing there's the overweight child in everywhere. It's like, I don't want to use the word fat because I think that's offensive. But and Judge Rinder, I just think you're amazing, by the way.
I love you too, Judge.
And I just think it's like, what's happening with this world? It's like
Well, I hear you, and the point is, these kids end up with, to say the least.
The point is, these kids have parents.
Right, and that's the point you're making, and a number of callers are quite angrily calling in to say the same thing, that this is about education, but it really starts culturally in the home around a conversation about food and food preparation. I'm going to go to you, Jake. It was interesting asking about Nelufar and her experience with healthy food growing up, despite having, zero privilege, zero money at all.
Look, so it depends how old the child is, but ultimately, particularly in the very start, when children are nursery age, the parents are gatekeepers to that child's diet. In fact, you're responsible for most of their meals. Obviously, the nursery will feed them, but nurseries are quite good at healthy eating. There's a couple of points I wanted to pick up on, though. You're right about this link to poverty. We should be really concerned about that. But the lack of facilities isn't an excuse not to do any exercise. And I want to talk about something really positive that's happening in Scotland with this thing called the Daily Mile. So half of all primary schools in Scotland start the day off with 15 minutes of vigorous exercise. It's the policy of the Scottish government, and you can do it anywhere. You can run around a playground. You don't have to have the playing fields of Eton to go and kick a ball around, whatever they look like. So there are some really good things throughout the United Kingdom. I think it's been going since 2012. Right. Elaine Wiley, a Scottish primary school head teacher, brought it into Scotland. There's some really good things that we should be looking at across not just Britain but the world to try and improve the health.
Well, the charity are calling, just to be clear, for greater levels of physical activity. Just 2 points to throw into the mix for our callers and for you. What we're saying is it's about education. Education in schools about good food. There's a reason why on the European continent, in France and in Italy, that they don't have this problem.
Actually,
and in Japan.
France now has more McDonald's per capita than the United Kingdom, and it also has a bigger obesity problem with young people than the United Kingdom. That is a society in which their hugely strong connection with fresh food and cooking has been broken down in a generation. So something's going on.
But something about what's going on is advertising. Now, just to be really clear, and I hope our listeners just plug into this, because I was quite horrified by this. Junk food advertising ban, the ban rather, was set to begin in October 25 to tackle some of this, right? So no ads before 9 p.m. Just to be clear, Guardian reporting made clear that there was pressure from these various groups that represent the Food and Drink Federation, which represents a number of these corporations, to ditch it, right? And that actually worked.
Yes.
Now, people that say that the people with less power, right, are not being influenced by those who have a lot of corporate power should be really alarmed by what took place here. Don't you think?
Absolutely right.
Yes.
And it's not been cancelled. I think it's been delayed. And I think there will have been arguments put to the government like, well, if you stop advertising a fizzy pop on television, it will undermine independent television makers. It will have a wider economic impact, but it does show how the government can bend its knee to these large corporations. I saw some of this in my time in government with the huge resistance we had against the sugar tax introduced by George Osborne over a decade ago now. And what we found, we did delay it actually, because there was concern from the industry about the time taken to reformulate drinks like, I don't know, fizzy pop or squash for your kids. What we did find when it eventually came in, it had a massive impact, and most of those recipes were reformulated to reduce the amount of sugar. So we know it works.
Well, I'll come to Nelufar, but proof that it worked, yet if you've got access to the money and the power, you somehow manage to get access to government in the way that not all of us
There's
do.
no carrot lobby.
Come back to you, Mark. You're in the West Midlands. Let's come back to the question. When a kid is overweight, is it the parents or is it the schools? Who's fundamentally to blame?
I think it's a combination of things. I mean, my mother used to be at home. Sorry, I'm talking over you, aren't I?
No, you're not, Mark.
My mother used to be at home, and she was always there. She'd come home from school dinner time. You had something to eat. You came back and you had something to eat on the evening. It was all home cooked. There was no multi-packs of things. You didn't have abundance of things in the house. You had to go and buy a Mars bar if you wanted a Mars bar, and you wouldn't be allowed all the time. It'd be a treat. You know what I'm saying? And,
Mark, can I just tell you something? Mark, the worst areas, the ones that Nelufar was calling out before, and that this charity have identified for childhood obesity, is in Wolverhampton, 51%, and in Walsall, right near to where you are. And part of the concern here is a number of fast food outlets that are right next door to schools. I wonder what you make of that. How difficult is it, even if you've got, parents at home who are cooking for kids, to stop them going into those various outlets?
I suppose if you got the money, you'll go in. I mean, we only had the chip shop, and that was on a Friday because we're Catholic, and it used to be fish and chips on a Friday.
Yeah. Different times, my friend. But Tonya, you're in East Sussex.
I am.
What's your view? Is it mums and dads or carers who are responsible for this, or is it schools and all these big companies putting all this terrible food in the marketplace in the first place?
I think it's mums and dads, and we've seen a change because we have this gentle parenting where parents will give in to their children without actually policing what's happening, and they'll give in and give them a snack if they won't eat their meal, and generally it's just not good for them.
Thank you, Tonya. Let's go to you, right? I don't know why I ask you about this, because it strikes me, given the person you are, I cannot imagine, extraordinary story of your mum's, a mathematician, right? Yes. Comes to this country and you are the apotheose, the outcome of that success and all of that risk that they took, right? I can't imagine you coming home to your parents and saying, on the way home, I decided to eat this.
Yeah.
And your parents go, that's just fine.
No, my mum absolutely hated fast food. We weren't allowed it. We were only allowed it on special occasions. And even then, it was too expensive at the time. There's something that we have to fundamentally understand if we're going to get to the bottom of why our children are obese. Subsidies. The government gives subsidies to certain products and certain foods that it believes should be produced. We know that the fast food lobby applies for many, many subsidies and it gets them essentially tax breaks from the government. So whereas when I was young, those subsidies were minor, they didn't have much of a power play. Right. Now they do. If I was a mother, which I hopefully never will be, but if I ever was a mother, I don't know if I'd stop my kids eating turkey twizzlers just because they're so cheap and easy.
Well, I mean, the question that we ask, is it parents to make mixed feelings? It seems like there's a combination in the public's view that it's parents who are responsible, big companies, schools and education, and certainly more exercise. What we do know is less in and more out.